Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the One More Jump podcast by Rise Pole Vault. Today's episode is brought to you by Essex, world-class vaulting poles. We just got through with an amazing weekend with Katie Moon and her coach, Brad Walker. These are two legends that we were very fortunate to be able to have come in and do an elite experience camp with, film a bunch of content with, and just have some amazing conversations. We had dinners and just all kinds of crazy long conversations about pole vaulting and life and all sorts of things. We probably could have made up 15 podcasts over the weekend. But we did get an opportunity to sit down and record a podcast with one of history's greatest combos. And we hope you guys enjoy this podcast with Katie Moon and Brad Walker. All right, well, welcome. What do you guys think of the spot and just kind of everything?
It's awesome.
This
is definitely the best indoor facility that I've been in terms of like a club. That's not like in a university brand new.
Right.
Yeah, ditto that. I think I've seen pictures of one in Texas. It looks pretty sharp as well.
Yeah,
but I mean,
there's a couple.
Yeah, beautiful 2 pits, 2 runways, nice place to run on the inside, in between. And I love a lot of what you guys do here is like what I would envision if I was going to put something together, right? The 2 monitors, having a tape delay so everybody gets to see their jump when they get off the pit, and fast board runways. I mean, it's great. You guys did a phenomenal job putting this thing together.
We appreciate it. I was talking to Brad a little bit about how when we walked in, it was like, I remember talking with you a long time ago and just being like, I think if we put stuff together and we try to do it right, that like people will actually want to like come here and like really good people. And it was just like that moment when you guys walked in and I was just like walking up behind you guys and I was like, I got the chills. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. Like you guys actually came out here and did this. And I don't think you guys understand how much that means to us. What in the world is going on?
We are happy to be here, but maybe not as happy as he is to be
here. Right.
No, but thank you.
Yeah. So one of the things, like for the people who are not aware, like Brad and I had talked a long time ago. Brad's like been kind of helping me behind the scenes with like helping Luke whenever I was coaching him, and we've always liked seeing each other. And so it was just like, let's see if we can get something going where you guys come here and we like are able to film a little bit of content, do the podcast, and then we're going to do a little camp thing tomorrow.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I wanted to do the podcast, and one of like the most valuable things I think about podcasts, is the documentation. Like when you document it digitally, it just never goes away. And it's so cool that like maybe you don't think about it right now, but like 10, 15, 20 years from now, like you could come back and you could be like, hey, let's listen to that podcast and like reminisce about like what it was like whenever I was like at the peak of my athletic career. And then the other thing too is just you guys, your story is so cool. Like, and I don't know how many people know about like how it all started. And I think it'd just be really cool just to have it documented and have people understand like kind of where it all started. So Katie, I'll go from your perspective of where you were at whenever you met Brad, and just kind of actually, if you could just refresh us too on like your come up, because yours has been a slow burn. This podcast is sponsored by UST Essex, world-class vaulting poles. Pole vaulters all over the world know how important it is to have the right pole at the right time. From the fiberglass launch to the carbon-based recoil advanced, Essex has created the most seamless line of poles on the market. Built with input from beginners and Olympians alike, Essex poles' lightweight design and narrow diameter give athletes the confidence they need to grab the next pole and go. Essex believes pole vaulting is more than an event. It is a pathway to opportunity. Their mission goes beyond performance. They are proud to support the pole vault community, helping athletes of all ages unlock their potential, pursue higher education, and create brighter futures. Visit www.ust-essex.com to find a dealer near you and set the standard today.
Yeah.
Like, it was not just like a straight through the roof.
Yeah.
You were just, I mean, you were a good high school pole vaulter, but not insane.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is one thing that is really fun about your story is it's like anybody could like, do it. Like, you showed that, like, it's like, man, like
anybody fast can
anybody that's fast. Yeah.
Thanks,
So anyway.
Yeah, no, I started when I was in 7th grade, and I was not a phenom, but I always had potential to where coaches would get excited to work with me and what I could maybe do. But it took me until my senior year of high school to win the state meet. It took me until my senior year of college to win nationals. It took me until 5 years out to, get my first contract and make my first team. And so I would like to think that I'm a testament to, if it doesn't happen immediately, it doesn't mean it won't happen, and just hard work, keep showing up. But yeah, when I graduated from college, I started working in Knoxville, Tennessee with a professional coach there. His name was Roman Bacharnikov. He was great. I just wasn't ready to be all in at that point. I think I still needed to feel in control, and I was a little one foot in because it's scary to think, what if I give this everything and I don't make it and I'm not as good as I want to be?
All in, like bought into, like,
yes.
I'm going to be a post-collegiate pole vaulter.
And I wanted to be, and I moved there, but like, I think on an emotional level, I was a little like, I just, for some reason, couldn't get there the way that I did in Brad's system.
Right.
And I think I had just been good on my own at that point. Obviously, I had knowledgeable coaches, but as a whole, it was a lot of it was just pure talent and potential. And you get to a point where that caps out. And I ended up getting really homesick and just started struggling a little bit after, I think, the second year there. And so I moved back home. I went to the Olympic trials in 2016 using Roman's training plan, but working with my college coach, kind of in my comfort zone. I had a great meet. I jumped 460, which tied my outdoor personal best, and I didn't make the team. And up until that point, if I had a great day at a championship and I wanted something out of it, I usually got it. And so that was very humbling and a big wake-up call that I could not keep doing what I was doing and stay in my comfort zone. I had to just go into a fully new system and just buy in. And so I was kind of looking around, and I reached out to Brad. We had jumped together at a couple meets, but like, he was at the back end of his career. I was brand new. So I was that annoying little girl that was just like trying to meet everybody and like, hi, Brad. And he's like, don't talk to me.
I don't remember that, but maybe.
But probably.
Yeah.
No, but I remembered very distinctly, we were at Shula for a meet, and somehow we got talking, and I don't remember specifically what you said, but the way that you talked to me about the vault, you just instilled a lot of confidence in me and just made it, like, simplified it in a way where I just remembered that and was like, I had heard that you took the job at Washington State if you could coach elites. And so I reached out because I remembered that interaction, and I remembered just how good I felt after that conversation. And
do you remember what was said, like, in the conversation?
Not really. I know that I had just come back from Taiwan, and I was jet lagged and fatigued. And I just remember he was saying a lot of positives, but like broke it down very simply. And it was a very brief interaction, so I doubt he would even remember that, but it stuck with me.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifics, but you always remembered like how people make you feel. And so that I was like, yeah, if he ever coached, that'd be awesome. And then I again heard that he had taken that job at Washington State, and I don't know that he was ready for that, and he can tell you that himself, but I sent him my video, and he's like, yeah, okay, come out. And I knew day one he was able to make changes that I had never been able to make myself and make it feel like my jump. It didn't feel disconnected and disjointed. And so, yeah, I don't know if he knew what he was getting himself into, but I was committed. I was like, this is it. And because I had exhausted all options in my mind, I knew this was it. If this didn't work, nothing was going to work. And so I think that allowed me to buy in completely.
So were you at a point like where it was like I might like have to just pack it up, or like were you still gonna pursue it regardless, or I just don't know where you were at?
I was young enough and experiencing enough success. Like I was getting into some of the diamond leagues. I had a very good agent. I mean, I still have a very good agent that was able to, use some of the better athletes she had to help get me into those meets. So I wasn't out jumping enough people to outright get into those meets. But, she had the Olympic champion and kind of used her to help me get in. And then I was holding my own. So I was at a spot where I don't know that I would have quit anytime soon, but I wouldn't have lasted this long by any means. Just because it's not sustainable. I wasn't making money.
So we had, in the last 24 hours, we probably had 15 podcasts worth of content because last night we just talked forever about everything.
Yeah, I think you got the whole podcast.
So I was going to say like the whole podcast and then some. But if you could just really quick, I thought that your story of like how you, like the specific things that were in that first jump session in Washington State that like really like made it click for you.
The biggest thing I was always told is you need a bottom arm. I always collapsed immediately, swung right off the ground. I never put any energy in. And anytime I tried to keep my bottom arm out, I felt stuck. I couldn't swing. It just didn't feel, and that was something that I was always good at, was swinging fast and getting upside down. And so I just never knew how to connect those two. And so Brad made it more about top hand pressure and that it's just getting the bottom arm up out of the way, but then you want to then crank that top hand pressure to the shins as fast as you can. And I had never heard it that way before. No one had ever explained it that way. All I ever heard was you just need a bigger bottom arm. And
that sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah. And so he just made it so that I could actually do it and make it a part of my jump. And it was just a different way of explaining it that made sense.
Right. All right. So Brad, you get a call. You got a call from Katie?
A text.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's like the first thing that goes through your mind? Like, are you thinking that she's trying to get in?
Sneak in. No. Well, so I believe it was my second year at WSU. I always wanted to coach elites, but I didn't think I was like ready because I had just taken on the college gig. I was in the middle of I was retired at this point, but I had thoughts that maybe I could do, a little bit more jumping, things like that. Mm-hmm. But I knew that the career was definitely winding down, and when she reached out, my immediate thought was like, I don't really want to do this just yet, to be honest. But I said, send me a video, because I although I did know Katie and had seen her a little bit, I didn't really ever analyze her jump from like a coaching perspective. Mm-hmm. So I was like, just send me one of your videos. And it was clear that she was fast, but it was clear she was doing a lot of things wrong. And that's like a pretty awesome equation as a coach. You know what I mean? Like the last thing you want is somebody who's really technically proficient, who's already kind of like along in years and has their speed developed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because, what can you do? Well, you can support them and you can, help them along the way, but like immediate changes are going to be a little bit more difficult. So I saw her speed and what I thought would be her potential and said, why don't you come out? Because coaching elites, like the relationship is a big aspect, right? It's like, it's huge actually. Like they have to buy in, you have to enjoy working with them. And then in the high school or college world, you can be less emotionally attached. But with the elites, like you can't be, because that's their livelihood. Like that's a big ask. Like if Katie's going to move across the country to work with somebody who she doesn't know and our relationship is not good, then obviously that's going to end in a pretty big failure. So, so I wanted to see who she was. And so I invited her up for the week. And we talked about this yesterday. I didn't know anything about Katie, really. I didn't know there was any mental blocks. I didn't know that she had, weird ideas about, from start to finish, all sorts of different things. So I wanted to see what that was going to be like. And I just assumed we were only going to jump from short approach. And for me, you know, jumping from 3 or 4 lefts is not a super difficult task. So I was like, hey, well, I'll jump her from 4. And she was like, well, how should I get my poles there? Because Pullman's pretty hard. And I was like, oh, you'll just use ours. And that was, I didn't know this at the time, but that was a big thing. She was like, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? I can't borrow poles. This is going to be.
I had never jumped since high school, like club days. I had not jumped on not my poles, like
Right.
and I had never jumped from 4 lefts. And
Wow.
I don't think I had ever bent a pole from 3 lefts. So it was like, I didn't even know what poles of mine I was going to use, but like, he was like, no, you're fine. We have poles here. And that was my first like big trust like that. Like before I even was out there, that was the
Yeah.
first big, like, okay, like I'll trust you. And
Yeah.
it worked out.
I think
Well, yeah.
I think a lot of it too is the way he talks. Like just the
Yes.
way you talk is like there's no doubt. You know what I'm
He's
saying?
so
Like
sure of
it's just like
himself that
it's just when it's just
Yes.
no doubt. Like and so then it just makes you feel like, oh, that's
Yes.
the right thing.
100%. That it is like, I
okay.
feel like it's rare to meet just someone so like sure, like this is what it is. Like there's no,
Right.
and his big catchphrase is it's a choice. You either choose to come down the runway and hit your takeoff and hit your cues or you don't. And I'm like, it's so much harder than that. He's like, it's really not. And it's not like
It
it's,
isn't, yeah.
I mean, really, there's no reason that I can't do it exactly the same on the runway as I do on the track. But yeah, that was the first big
Yeah.
trust. He just has so much confidence in what he's saying that it's like, yeah, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, right.
So she shows up and we went through just real basic stuff. And there was things on her video that I remember she was pretty lopey, long steps coming in, planting behind herself. There was very clear reasons, at least in my head, of why she couldn't push on her left arm and why, you know, the jump was a little disconnected. And so we kind of went through some of the basic fundamental stuff, but she picked it up really quickly. And that was, you know, I've worked with enough people to know that picking it up quickly is unique, actually, even though it seems like these are simple movements. When you start moving, like everybody can do a walking, well, it's funny because not a lot of people can do a good walking plant. However, you can coach a good walking plant in one quick session.
Right.
Then you ask them to move on the pole vault pit and watch everything revert back to everything they've always done, and you don't see the carryover. And so even on that first session, she was doing the things that I was asking her to do. And I didn't know how good of a session it was. Like she didn't, you know, unveil all of her
That's
hand.
interesting.
I was so excited, but I'm like, I got to keep my cool.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, because it's what I expected. You know, I was like, okay, we're gonna do this, and we're jumping from short, so it's gonna be easy and all that stuff. But she was hitting all the positions, and I didn't know she was having a great session, but I was happy with how it went.
Right.
And also, when you have your first interactions with somebody and you're trying to figure out personality-wise if you're gonna click, there didn't seem to be any like barriers or roadblocks to anything. And we had, was it 2 or 3 sessions that trip? I thought there was maybe 3.
You're probably right. I know there was more than one
Yeah.
where it was just, I was so excited because each one I was able to finally have a bottom arm and actually swing. And
That's what I was
so-
kind of going to ask, though. Was it on that trip that you, like, showed the, like, anxiousness that you, or, like, all, like, the fears and all that stuff?
No,
like,
I think
or
I
was
tricked him.
She tricked me.
Like, how,
Yeah, she
was there a
tricked me.
moment where you were like, oh, I see now, like
Once I was moved and
like
committed.
fully moved and committed?
to understand a little bit of the
Like,
psychology
we don't
she was
have
dealing
to,
with?
yeah, like, we don't have to go super deep into it, but I'm curious if there was, like, a workout where everything just hit the fan and then it was like, okay, I know what we're working with. We got to dive into this and we're in this together, or if it was just like over time you kind of discovered that.
I have one in mind.
Well, I think the best way to answer that is you can sense when somebody's confident and not confident. So I could see she was maybe lacking a bit of confidence. However, confidence is a skill that's acquired over time by doing things correctly, right? So when she was able to do things correctly consistently and hold on to the cues that she had been working on, I was like, okay, we can work with this. Like,
Yeah.
it's easy to understand if somebody has a really bad approach and a passive plant, why they may be a bit nervous to pole vault, right? Because nothing
Oh,
about
yeah.
that instills confidence. So I was like, we can change the confidence thing. And I let her know, like, in full disclosure, after we had kind of, you know, all the conversations and stuff like that, and we talked about this before, I said, I won't be a coach who taps you every jump because I don't believe in that. And knowing, I mean, she wasn't hiding anything. So she had told me, I get tapped all the time. And I was like, just so you know, if you come up here, that's not going to be how we move forward. And so I all of my cards were on the table. And as far as I knew, I wasn't sure. I didn't know until later that she was as excited and knew immediately that's where she wanted to be. I thought she was going to go home and have to think about a lot of things. And I think the plan was for her to come after the indoor season.
Yeah, what time of the year was this?
So this was around Thanksgiving.
Okay.
The plan was to do the whole
2017?
year, the whole 2017 back at home, and then make a move. And I just knew, I'm like, this is it. This is where I need to be. And so I moved after the indoor season. So I it expedited things quickly. But I knew it was right, and I feel like we've proven that right. So
I think you have.
What was your workout that you said you had a workout in mind that everything kind of snapped?
I think where it started to just get a little anxious for me is when we went to 6 lefts. To this day, I will say 6 I can definitely jump well from, but it's so in between that I don't enjoy it. And if it feels off, it's really off. Because
you don't enjoy it enough to win a world championship with it.
Yeah, it's a bad approach for her.
I did say I could jump high on it, but because it's from 4 lefts and 5, you're kind of just gunning it from the start. It's just all acceleration, full approach. You're building for half, and then you're accelerating. 6 is that weird in between where I'm on full approach
always felt
pulls.
that
He
way.
was like that
I hated
too.
6.
I didn't get it.
Thank you.
I didn't understand it
Thank
at
you.
all.
People
I
either
never
love
did
it or
6.
hate
I
it.
never did it.
Okay, so our first bit from 6 is where things started to feel like it was weird, and then I started to get some Achilles issues because I was slamming on the brakes trying to stop, and so that was the first taste of it. And then one of the first outdoor practices that we had, he said, okay, you only get 6 run throughs because I'm only going to give you 1 tap. And I think we were coming in from full approach, which is still to this day, I don't practice from full approach very often. And I was running through, and I think he gave me a couple extras, and I ran through 8 times throughout the session. Something you gave me extra
I did
ones.
give her an extra one.
And he just very calmly and gets up and starts pulling the cover on the pit, and I burst into tears, just hyperventilating, sobbing. No one had ever shut down a practice on me before, and I needed it. I'm glad he did that because I had always been able to kind of push back with my coaches, and I actually was excited to work with Brad because I wanted to impress him more than so I wanted to do whatever he was giving me because I was a little intimidated. I was a little afraid of him. I just wanted to impress him, which was ultimately instilling a lot of internal motivation and confidence in myself and yada, yada.
Right.
But yeah, that was a very distinct day of Brad's what am I getting myself into? But he talked to me. He's like, look, we're not accomplishing anything with this. Let's go do pole runs. And then I did a bunch of pole runs. He's like, okay, do you want to get back on the runway? Yes. and I finished with a few good jumps.
And well.
So that really that I would say that was the one where he was probably I regret everything, but here we are. So.
But was she the first elite that you worked with?
Well, when I was jumping, I would always, as much as I could, and probably to the point where people were like, hey, stop helping. I would try to help friends and people like that. And so in a very loving way, because Yu Kim is an amazing person. I love the dude. People who know the pole vault and know who Yu Kim was know that he had a lot of his own run-through issues and things like that. So I had been around, run-through issues and grip issues and things during my career. And fortunately, I, for the most part, avoided them. But in that specific situation with Katie, all I needed to do was let her know that it's not okay. And maybe for young vaulters and people who have run-through issues, I feel for you.
Yeah.
But it's not okay to think that it's okay to run through. And everybody knows that they shouldn't be. Well, here's the truth of it. Most of the people who have run through issues know they're going to run through before they take their first step. Mm-hmm. They almost always know they're going to run through.
Yep.
So what happens is they reinforce this pattern that it's okay to do. They know that it's not okay, but I can do it. And I needed Katie to know that she can't. I needed to know your practices will not move forward if you don't leave the ground. because we can't make progress. And also knowing that previous people she had worked with had allowed things to happen for maybe a little bit longer than they should have. And I knew that she had kind of been able to run the show in the past, and I knew that I couldn't allow that, not just because, as a coach, I want to tell her what to do or any of that kind of stuff. It was like, this will not be good for her development, therefore it cannot happen.
Right.
So I have to let her know that it's not an acceptable option.
Yeah.
And when you take that option away from somebody, then they reevaluate, okay, why is it happening? How do I make it not happen? A lot of times a run through, when they take the first step, they know that it's not going to happen. Sometimes that's not the case. And a yellow light is okay. Like I have a little red light, yellow light, green light system. So we all want to have green lights and leave the ground, and the red light should be an abort because it's going to be unsafe if you leave the ground.
Right.
When you have a yellow, take it. Like, you might have to slide down the pole to get to safety, but you have to make sure that you're committing yourself every time you're on the runway, and that has to be a part of the mindset. And so I just needed her to know on that session, we can't do this.
Yeah.
You're not just going to be the run through story.
So boundary, you had to set a boundary. And actually, now that you're talking about this, I hate to make a parenting reference, but it's almost like parenting, with a kid. It's like you love them, but it's like, I have to establish boundaries for you, and you might not understand it, but I have to do that because that's my job as a parent.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that too, working with Luke, because he's my brother and I love my brother. And we would be in a workout and it'd be like, man, I'm thinking in my head, I don't want to upset them. I don't want to, I don't want him to be mad at me or whatever.
Brad doesn't care.
And that's what's great about Brad. I was just telling you about how, man, it must be nice because he will tell you exactly what it is that you need to hear. And then he doesn't have to deal with the dilemma of being upset about it. And that's the boundaries as a coach, you have to establish that.
Yeah.
And you probably got really good at manipulating your way to with other people, trying to get more jumps out of them, or no, I'll do it this next time, or whatever.
Well, it was the opposite for me. I wanted to jump as little as possible because vaulting scares me. To this day, it's so much better. I would say it not as much anymore, but especially at that time, it was really scary for me. And we, analyzed why and all of that, but I would take maybe 4 jumps in a session and be like, that was awesome. I'm good. Let's go home. And he held me accountable to take a lot of jumps and actually make changes. And so it was a combination of just more volume than I had ever done, along with I'm a little uncomfortable with this. And I needed him to shut that down because it lit a fire, and I'm like, okay, we need to figure this out, because this is not gonna fly.
So did she have the raw materials when she showed up, or was it just basically almost like a mental thing that you were able to do to her to create this amazing vaulter, or was it a combination of I guess I'm trying to say did you need to get her a lot faster or a lot stronger, or was it mainly just we need to turn her into a mental beast?
Again, Roman was a great coach for Katie at the time, and I certainly have nothing negative to say. I think I've only met him a few times, but he's awesome whenever I meet him.
Right.
However, he had a different approach, and it was a very different approach that probably came from more of a Russian system, as he came from Russia. It was a little bit more of let's stay as light as possible. And
body weight wise,
okay. Yeah. And I had asked her what her, before I even started working with her, I asked her what her strength program looked like. There was a lot of staying fresh for jump sessions. And in my opinion, and with, where I come from, that will kill your progress very quickly. Kill your,
Okay.
To all the young pole vaulters out there who need to add strength and speed to themselves, staying fresh for all your jump sessions will kill your trajectory, because we jump too much to stay fresh for every jump session. And so if you're trying not to lift hard because you don't want to feel weight room pain, later on in the week when a jump session's approaching, you're probably in a lot of trouble. And so she was a little bit light, because that's kind of the philosophy that her previous coach had. The weight room volume was significantly under from my perspective. And obviously knowing that there's a correlation between strength and speed, I knew that if we got her strength levels higher, then her speed would develop nicely as well. Speed is, most people understand there are certain parameters you can work within to make somebody faster, but it's also a God-given skill, and she had the tools to be really fast. I'm pretty sure she's gotten significantly faster while working with me, but that was one of the reasons why I was like, hey, I should take a chance on this one, because you can tell that she's fast. So to answer your question, she had tons of talent, which is why I wanted to bring her on. And then I think we were able to highlight some of her strengths. And from a psychological standpoint, that was, I think she would admit as well, that was probably the biggest challenge. And I think, and I'm really happy to see it now, where it's like probably made the biggest impact, you know what I mean? So so it was kind of all encompassing. There was a lot of stuff that we could do, and certainly her talent level was high before she showed up, which is why I wanted to work with her.
Whenever you first started working with Brad, it was pretty, from outsider's perspective, being a jumper at that time and like seeing like, oh, Katie's going to train with Brad, and then seemed like within like a year you won US indoors and jumped 490, and like everything changed at that point. Was it like a pretty steady, like you joined Brad and it was just kind of like, dang, this thing's skyrocketing?
Like,
and was that
working?
surprising that it was
Most
that
part.
big of a gain? Or
I wouldn't say surprising, because I was so sure that this was the right place. Like I could see, I had always been told like, man, you could jump really high. But it was finally like I had a roadmap of how exactly that was going to happen. And it wasn't just one day I was going to pop a big one. Even, in theory, that's kind of what I did. But I knew exactly how we were going to get there now. And so, it for the most part, it was pretty consistent. I remember I was jumping a bunch of 50s and 60s, which is what I had been doing. It wasn't any major changes, but I think he knew I was ready to jump like a 70. This was the end of 2017.
Yeah.
And I jumped another 55 at the London Diamond League, and I messaged him and I was like, yeah, it went well. I ended on a blow through, but I was kind of excited about how it went. And I just remember, I think you were on a fishing trip with your family.
Yeah.
And this was all over emails. Or maybe this was right before you left and you talked, but you were like, you have got to stop being okay with anything less than 470. And I just remember I'd never had a coach. Like, all my coaches were so nice to me. I love Roman, Roman and Denny and my high school coach, Godfrey, like they were all so nice to me. And Brad was like really the first one, like pulling the cover on the pit, like just holding me accountable. And that next meet I went to Gothenburg and jumped 470. And it was like, I just needed somebody to just say, no, stop being okay with this. Like, you need to stop being okay with the girls beating you and be friends with, like, you can be friends with them, but you need to not be okay with them beating you. And so I just, yes, it took little time at each phase, but as a whole, I knew exactly how it was going to come together. You didn't know when, and obviously you hope, but I just had such a good feeling about it that it made it. Yeah, I don't know.
How old were you when
surprised.
you went to Washington State?
It was 24
or something?
17. Let's do the math.
Oh boy.
Oh gosh, I was born in 91, so what would that be? I was 30 and 21.
We're all really bad at math here, as
so
you can tell.
bad at math.
We're gonna figure it out.
26? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
You said,
I think it,
I was
17 and
mid-20s. I
91.
knew
So
I was mid-20s.
The thing that's funny about that is I remember that was 2017 that you won indoor.
2018 is when
Yeah.
I won.
That was my senior year of college. But like at that point, I had jumped 550s and a couple times, and I remember kind of being like, man, maybe I can be like Katie, and like it'll be like,
Yes.
maybe it'll just be one of these things where like my next big trajectory up is just I'm gonna have to be patient and like work through some stuff.
Yeah.
And ironically, it was 26 whenever I made the world.
Yeah.
All that stuff happened. It was like I moved on. Jake started coaching me.
Yeah.
It was a different change of environment. We switched to a high intensity, lower volume training and like changed some things. And that season was like, oh, I made the world team, and then the next year jumped 19 feet and then made the Olympic trials. Like it all just
Yep.
panned out that way. But I say that because there was legitimate times where I was like taking inspiration from like, oh, there's
Yeah.
a girl who went D2, like we went
Yeah.
D3 and made it her way like kind of through the ups and downs of not having any money and trying to pole vault and all of that kind of thing, and then go into the like rinky dink elite meets and then like the good elite meets and kind of being at the bottom of the barrel
Yeah.
and then working your way up. So
Yeah.
That's what I meant
Cool.
by
It
that.
it was
Oh,
pretty it was
thanks.
pretty cool because I
Yeah.
remember when that happened though and you won USA's, I was like, dang, like she's really doing like what that would be sick if I
Yeah.
could do that
Yeah.
one day. But I think, I don't know, we have like a 4-year age gap probably somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And that same kind of trajectory, you know, I'm not an Olympic gold medalist, Olympic silver medalist, world
No, but
champion, world champion, you know.
If you're making
but,
teams in the U.S., you're doing something right.
but
so.
I always took a lot of inspiration from that. And it was just kind of ironic that the somewhat same trajectory happened whenever I was like, well, I guess mid-20s doesn't mean that your like career's over.
No.
You know, like it could just be the start. You know?
Yeah.
That's what
There's
I
something
meant,
magical
yeah.
about 26. Sorry.
Really?
Like I feel like mid 20s like is when Nina really came on, and
Yeah.
I feel like you can obviously have success immediately just from pure talent, but like if you're somebody that's kind of had to like build your way up at mid 20s cuz there's that you've had time for
Yeah.
technique and strength.
Brad was talking, you said earlier something about like the technical and then like the mental or something like
Well,
crossing.
Yeah, I made a comment about the male athletic prime is roughly around 29.
Yeah.
And in technical events, there's a bell curve as well of technical skill, right? So I guess it probably isn't necessarily a bell curve. It may just be a linear line, but at some point they're going to connect. And so I think in field events, the male athletic prime, which is going to be 26, your peak may actually be after that when the technique, you know, comes along with it. And there are obviously outliers, right? So if you've taken as many jumps as Mondo has in his life, that technical line may be a little bit skewed to an
Yeah.
earlier age. But yeah, it's kind of where they intersect is probably going to be where you're, you know, likely to have your best jumps.
Yeah, but that was what I meant by like that. Like you showed that like I didn't believe that. I'm just being honest. I didn't believe that I could become one of those people that makes teams and stuff like that unless I got, because everyone else got like a contract out of college
Yeah.
and they had jumped their big bars in college, and I just remember just being like it's like people like me, like it doesn't happen, like
Yeah.
and then like we talked about it all the time. It's like Katie did it, like, you know, like, and then it was like, yeah, you can do that and it can work. And I mean, I know there were people that did it before. Hartwig was
Yeah.
a big one, you know, like there are definitely people that have done it, a lot of people, but I don't know, it just like for a while there, it just seemed like if you weren't part of that group,
Yeah.
that you just were screwed.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then you just couldn't do it.
When I was in the
Yeah.
era of like Sam and Sean Barber, like graduate or like stopping at college early to get
Yeah.
a sponsorship
Yeah,
and
right?
stuff. And I'm
Like-
like, is that the path I need to
Yeah.
take? I need to jump high enough to where I don't finish out school
Yeah.
and like all this, or finish out my college eligibility.
Right.
I think one of the reasons I was so excited when I started working with Brad is because I could see how I wasn't going to be afraid of it anymore
Yeah.
and like conquer the mental side of it. And I had never been taught how to think on the runway. And so to your question earlier, that was how I knew that I was going to finally achieve the things I wanted to. And so but it just takes time. It takes reps. And that's why, yes, you can be good right away, but it's not unheard of for people that are in their mid 20s to finally find it, because it just takes time to not only get the reps, but the weight room strength, the speed, and then combine it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How much of like a consulting like value did Brad offer too, because he had been to like a lot, had a lot of experience at the elite level, making teams and becoming world champion and setting the American record. Like that is an aspect of it too that probably like gave you an underlying confidence.
100%. I mean, the biggest part of, obviously his confidence we just talked about,
Right.
but knowing he went through it and was successful with it and it works. And it was the way he talked about it was when he felt something once, he could just always do it. So then it was how fast, how strong, how powerful he can be. And I'm like, well, if Brad can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
Even though he's kind of like inhuman in certain ways on the runway. He's just a machine. But that was what I was trying to be. I just wanted to be more like how he described it. And yes, this is possible. This is doable. It's a choice. I can choose to come down and hit it this way every time. And I can, so really just all of his experience and the stories that he would tell. I think my favorite one was when I first started working with him. He talked about how his American record jump was, from a technical standpoint, you didn't like the jump. Like you said, your pole drop got low, you were leaning back, whatever, and then but you committed to the jump. And your point was that you commit to every jump. And then my winning jump in Tokyo was, I was really under. I was totally lost in the air to the point where I was like, I've either cleared the bar or taken an entire jump under it. I'm not,
Oh my
I think I'm over it, but I couldn't like see it. And I just went straight up and lost feel, but I committed and didn't pull out of it. And when I went over there, that was the first thing I said to him, and it just came so full circle. But all these stories from his experience played a huge part in everything that I took.
Right. What are some things that you did in your career that you learned from that Katie didn't have to take on because of your experience learning?
Wow, that's a interesting question.
Kind of a hard one.
Yeah, it is a hard one. You don't know, you never know what you avoid because you never, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know exactly what she sped up with. I think.
What did you have any guidance for her on agent stuff like that, or did you already had an agent at the time and everything?
Karen had actually worked with him.
Okay.
So when I told Karen I was going to work with him, she was okay with that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one thing that maybe was helpful, and she kind of understood this, was maybe my mind is works in a unique way where a lot of times I can remove emotion from the equation and see what things are from like a logic perspective. I can't always do that, of course, but like I think it works in a way where I can understand processes without the emotion clouding stuff. So the way that I coach has to do with like kind of a process. I remember thinking to myself, there were a lot of people who were like talking about the world record before they jumped 580. It's just like as a goal, and it's great to have dreams. Like there's nothing wrong with goal setting, but I remember thinking to myself when I was younger, I mean, I was an elite and I was watching some of even the college kids, that the people who seemed to have the most success were logic-based people who didn't have these like pipe dreams. And what I mean by that is when I understood, what I understood with the jump was it wasn't like... It wasn't emotionally did I want to become an Olympian? Absolutely. But there was a process to becoming it. It wasn't just like, here's like this one thing that I want to do and now somehow it's going to all come together. It was like, what's the process here?
Right.
And for me personally, the process was I need to get stronger and I need to be faster. And then I understood that pole size directly relates to how high you are in the air. So then it became an endless pursuit to go to the next stick. And I always understood that clearing the bar was a result of all the proper inputs. So I had to make sure that the inputs were right and the result would come. And I think I was able to help Katie see that linear process and understand that the emotions can kind of follow, like go behind that process. So we had a lot of conversations where you can either cue something technical or you can have an emotion, but you generally can't have both at the same time. Like one of them always has to be driving. So if somebody goes to a meet and they're not in an emotionally good, stable place and their mind's like a tornado, you're not going to get very good vaulting and you're not going to get very good cue execution. If somebody has a really calm mind and they can execute very well, the emotion of a competition will be inside of them still, but they're logically thinking through a process, and that emotion will then end up turning into fuel instead of fueling like a tornado.
Yeah.
So it was trying to help.
I was about to say,
I think so.
it's like a book. This is good.
Clip that one.
Masterclass.
Clip that
Every
one.
day I sat through a masterclass.
So with Katie knowing that her mind can, as we all can, this is not a negative thing, her mind can get ahead of herself and cause her to pull out of being able to execute technically. It was really trying to instill the technical execution so her emotions could stay at ease. And that was, I think, very helpful.
Yes.
for lots of different reasons, and also knowing that the technique, if you were going to, for those of us listening or whatever who's played football in the past, like if you are going to be hit by somebody who's coming, you better lower your shoulder and get ready to like hit back, or if you lean back, you know you're about to get rocked, right?
Yeah, right.
So the position that the body's in will aid or change what your psychology is going to feel going into anything.
Right.
And so if you're coming in chest forward, arms up, getting ready to hit a takeoff versus like big roundhouse plant, stepping back, leaning back, is going to change the psychology, and that's going to change the emotion. And so the technical aspects or the cueing process that I try to instill in my pole vaulters will add to the emotion that they feel mid jump, or as you know, to be as aggressive as possible.
Right.
And the cues will then put the emotion behind, but still help that emotion come along. Whereas if you're just running off emotion and hoping things go well, like, you know, things are going to go crazy, and you go back into autopilot, which is all your old stuff, and your old stuff wasn't good, which is why you're trying to make new stuff, you know, so it ends up not working out. So anyway, I guess the long roundabout way of saying this is that I think when you said, what did you help her avoid because of your own stuff? I think it was understanding throughout my career the process that allowed me to understand the vault, and then trying to give her that process.
How did you did that
That makes a
come
lot
naturally?
of sense, by the
Oh
way.
yeah.
Like that's that's right up our alley. Like exactly what you're saying. I love it.
It makes everything seem so much more manageable too.
Yes.
Like when you wake up in the morning, I've never done this, but when you wake up the morning of the Olympic Games and the Olympic final,
Yeah.
if you're running on emotion, holy cow,
Yes.
that could be extremely overwhelming.
I
You know?
remember the first time I really I went to, it was the Brussels Diamond League in 2017. And I just remember being there, I feel like I have a cheat code. I feel like it's too simple because I know how I'm going to take it up every time. I know how I'm going to clear bars. Does that
Right.
happen every time? No. But I know exactly how to come down the runway, how to jump to clear 60, 70, at that time, not 70 or 80, but now it's I know if I do this, I will clear 480. It's just,
Right.
and he made it so simple, and that took so much of the negative, stressful, anxiety-based emotions out of it. And yeah, waking up, especially more so in 2021, because 2024, I woke up feeling not well, under the weather. But in 2021, I just remember waking up feeling so excited and optimistic, and I'm like, how many people get to wake up the day of the Olympic final with hope that they could
And
win?
not anxiousness and fear.
Yeah, but
and
just
all that.
the thought
Yeah.
that I could win. Even if I don't, so few people get this moment of I could win the Olympics. That's
Yeah.
so
and
cool.
how could you feel like that when you had food poisoning not very far before that? But it's a really good point, because
Yeah.
you don't have to feel good.
Yes.
You don't have to feel good, because
No.
you have some concrete things that you're anchoring to.
Yep.
And then it's all I have to do is execute these things.
Yes.
I don't have to feel good to do it.
Yep.
I don't have to do anything. I just have to execute those things.
Yep.
And then Brad
100%.
said, that's the choice. And it's am I going to make that choice? Yeah, I'm going to make that choice. Well, all right, we're good then.
I'm just going to
You
move
know?
my hand fast.
So it's
in the
not
takeoff, and
that
that's
big
it.
of a deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, you don't have to feel perfect every time. And that's always what I was searching for, was coming in feeling great. And one of the big things he talked about is fake confidence versus real confidence. And fake confidence is needing to feel good and having the perfect, meal before, and nothing's messed up and nothing, you just superstitious stuff. And
Right.
then real confidence is you can come in and hit a takeoff no matter how you're feeling, no matter what.
Because
And-
waking up and feeling good just kind of
doesn't
comes
get you
around.
much.
It comes around every once in a while.
rarely happens,
know,
especially at my big age.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The thing that I wanted to touch on was Jake was talking about how you weren't feeling great the day of the Olympics in 2024, but dialing in those cues and all that type of stuff. In 2020, whenever you were going into the Olympics, you put yourself in a position at that first bar that was a little bit iffy for all of us viewers. If you don't know, she got down to a third attempt on that opening bar. And I was talking to somebody the other day about how like the fear, some people have this fear of like, no, don't talk about a no height because like then you'll speak it into existence, or don't talk about winning the Olympics or thinking that you have the confidence to win the Olympics because then you're going to screw up your chances because fate's going to,
Yeah.
you know, get rid of all that. But
Yeah.
like you were saying that very confidently and you felt confident that morning. What's the difference between that thought of I can win the Olympics and I'm on my third attempt opening bar? What's going through your head there?
Oh, just I don't like uncomfortable situations, like, you know, fight or flight. I just freeze and panic, but I also just want to get out of there. Like I still to this day, when I think about it, you know, my hands go numb and like you just, that
Yeah,
third
you're like
attempt,
making me nervous. Even
Oh, it
bringing
was
it up
awful.
made me nervous. I'm like, oh, geez.
but it was truly like, just every cue to make that pole move, because I just kept coming down on it, which I never did at an opening height. I was always, it was a blow through miss or a blow through make, or I cleared it perfectly. It was never come down on it. And I just wasn't moving through the space. So it was just hit this freaking pole, like harder than you've ever hit a pole, like move this pole. This is not a big pole. So yeah, it was awful, but I am somebody that's slightly superstitious in that I don't like speaking things into existence.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I wasn't sitting there going, I will be Olympic champion.
yeah.
But it was me going, I'm going to move my hands fast. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And it's an equation. Like if I do this and I'm on this size pole, then I will be this high in the air and I'm tough to beat. I'm not impossible to beat by any means,
Yeah.
but I want to go into a championship and make it as difficult as possible for someone to beat me. But I have to do this, this, and this to make that happen.
And how disappointed I've had meets where you wake up the next day and it's like I didn't execute those things, and I think in my career I was like, if I'm gonna no height right now, I'm gonna no height the right way, and I'm gonna like go through and I'm going to actually hit my cues, and I'm gonna be okay with the consequences, because I'll be able to go to sleep that night and I'll be like, okay, well, you know, I did, but you executed. You didn't freak out. You just executed your cues, and the bar didn't stay up.
Yeah.
You know, the worst is whenever you just get into a meltdown and then you're just like, man, that was dumb.
Yeah.
You know, stupid.
Yeah.
You know, that's tough.
One of the best things that ever happened to me was that no height at UW before U.S. Nationals in 2018, when I had the meet of my life. And I no heighted because, well, some box collar issues, but then he ripped it out the third attempt and I just blew through. But it was a pole that I don't normally blow through on.
Right.
And so because I was drifting into the standard, he pulls out the box collar because all the college girls were out at that point, and I blew through and missed. But it was on a raised runway. And in that moment I was like, okay, we need to push poles in Albuquerque because otherwise the same thing's going to happen. And I got on the biggest pole I ever had in warm-ups, and I only switched poles once throughout the entire competition. So
Right.
no heights can be good, but they suck
Yeah.
in the moment.
There was one moment that was like, see, this is another thing where we're aligned there.
We are twins.
Yeah, for real. When Jake first started coaching me, within like a month was U.S. Championships indoors in Spokane, like in 2021 or 2022, whenever that was. And we were on like some smaller poles, shorter poles, but dialing some technical stuff. And it was kind of what we were talking about earlier about high school kids sometimes having a harder time looking at the long term, and also adult. Like I had a really hard time, and I was 26 at the time. So, but he told me, hey, you're taking those poles to the meet. If you blow through all of them and you know height, that'll be an unfortunate thing, but that's kind of where we're at. And
Sticking to the plan.
and he was like, but stick
Do
to the
it.
plan.
Stick to
If you
it.
send me a video of you not sticking to the plan, I'm going to be kind of pissed. Like if you try to baby a plant to try to make sure that you make the pole work, like that's going to be worse for your development. Crushed through all three of them and blew through all three, and
Yeah.
no height. And
NH.
that led to that 2022, making the world team and all that. But it's just another thing that we're aligned with. There is good no heights out there, and that's
Yeah.
sometimes people get nervous about talking about certain things and, not even wanting to bring up that like no heights are a thing or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like, they're inevitable. It's going to happen at one point in your life, and sometimes it could be a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that it was just one of those times that I was like, you have to be willing. Almost have to prove to me and show me that you're willing to execute, even if the worst thing happens.
Yeah.
You know, like, even if the worst thing happens, you're willing to execute. Because unless I know that you have that sort of buy-in, we're not going to go anywhere. You know, and it's not going to work. You know.
Yeah.
That's,
Brad's big on show me a blow through before you go up to the next pole.
Yeah, I mean, in the process of refining how I competed and things that I did, you realize that, you know, it's a process-driven event, and also you can make it as complicated or as simple as you want. And the job, I think, of all coaches is to take variables out of the equation, because the athlete will always overcomplicate pretty much anything. So you have to be able to understand what the most important variables are, and then focus your time, energy, and effort in those variables to have the shortest equation that equals the result that you're looking for. And part of that for us, I always have the athletes keep their standards fairly deep. When I say that, Katie almost never moves them from 80.
Really? Even
No.
in meets and
No.
anything? Oh,
No.
wow.
And that's
how I
that's a
was,
little
too.
bit more Katie's choice than mine. I will I will
Yeah.
always have my athletes start the meet with their standards at 80. No question.
Yeah.
Like, nobody gets to pull them in closer than that. As you refine your jump, and I know you're a safe vaulter, I'm good with standards, you know, probably 60 at the closest. If somebody convinces me 55 is a good place that they need to be at, sure, we can do that. But I think, number one, the jump needs time to unfold, and that equals deeper standards.
Yeah.
And there's a safety factor in there, and you can absolutely put little ghosts inside people's brains when they have some pretty unfortunate wrecks, and you have a lot better of a chance not taking a bad wreck if your standards are at 80 and you come up short. There's still pit underneath you. So there's lots of reasons I like to do that, but I also think that it's really bad to open a competition coming down on a bar, right? So if you can either make or blow through, or have a blow through make, then they are in a confident place to start the competition.
Yeah.
And also, those are early X's that rarely influence the outcome of a meet. So I'm willing to give like a blow through to open the meet. I'm willing to forego, you know, that can be sacrificed. But then by sacrificing it early, we generally don't have to sacrifice it later on. And that's, you know, kind of part of the process that I kind of, you know, coach from.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that jumping with them all the way back, like, and also starting a competition on a smaller pole. Like, we were talking last night about how, like, a good coach can trick people into doing, like, the right thing, like, by what they say. Like, Brad's example was, you know, hey, I need you to jump. Like, what would you do if you had to jump over the whole pit? You know, like, how would, you know, just do that. And it can trick them into doing the right things. And another thing you can trick somebody with is trick them into being confident. You know, like, it's like, hey, we're gonna grip here on this small pole, and we know that it's a small pole, but there's just a lot of positive reinforcement that happens when you move through a pole, even if you know it's small, like, as opposed to getting stood up.
Yeah.
Like, if you get stood up on your first jump of the warm up, you are just in a sheer panic from that
You're
point
in a
on.
hole that you gotta
know?
dig yourself out. Yeah.
And if you have the poles, which some people don't have the poles, but if you do have the poles, like, you can trick yourself into being confident. And if you don't feel we don't feel that good that day, like, you can just be like, all right, you know what, I'm just gonna hit this pole and then move through, and then all of a sudden it's like, dang, I've blown through 3 poles, you know.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty good. And then all of a sudden you've tricked yourself into having a good day.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I understand exactly what you're saying, but also I would remove the trick, because I don't think that it's necessarily a trick. I think it's a process, and the process lends itself. So, you know, you hear a lot of coaches who are like yelling at an athlete to get their drive knee up. Well, that is a result of jumping. So you don't lift a drive knee, you just jump off the ground, just like every person trying to dunk a basketball is going to have a good drive knee trail leg. Like, it's a result of a movement.
Right.
So if you're asking somebody to jump over the back of the pit, you're not tricking them into getting their knee up. You're helping them understand that jumping is an aspect of this, and then the position forms.
Right.
So it's like it's instead of tricking them, and I know that, you know, I'm kind of
Yeah.
nitpicking, but I guess what I was saying when you were saying this is I didn't want people listening to think that it's somehow not a good way to go about it, because
Right.
what if you could help somebody understand a thought process that creates a form in their body,
Right.
that's almost a better way than giving them a still shot and say, show me how this form looks. You know what I mean?
Right,
The thought
right.
process will always lead to the result. But if you don't have somebody jumping and they're like artificially using their hip flexor to lift their knee, then we know
Yeah.
energy isn't necessarily going into the jump. So that was one thing I wanted to say. There was another aspect I was gonna, in a very common situation, let's say you have a good warm up and you're starting on a pole that is the right pole if everything's perfect.
Right.
And you have your whatever, let's just say standards are at 80. The common situation is you're going to be filled with adrenaline for your first jump, which means you're going to run a little bit harder, you're going to cover a little bit more ground, which then means you're going to be under. So if you're on that perfect pole, that's good for a perfect step, but now adrenaline puts you under, you now come down on that bar. Right? 9 times out of 10, you're coming down on that bar. And it's not because you did anything wrong. It's the right pole. You just had adrenaline in your system. You didn't include that in the equation, so now you have to correct from that. But that same thought process, if you're on a pole that's a little bit small, that's going to be a blow through or a blow through make, now you can absorb that under takeoff a little bit. That pole still works. The coach catches that you were under, and now you get to make a preemptive change. Hey, this next one's going to be a blow through if your step's on. So let's go ahead and go up poles, but also move that step back. So now jump 2 is good, and you have a safe clearance even though they were under on a smaller pole versus the perfect pole now coming down on the bar. And then the athlete kind of starting to freak out, like, dang, my warm-ups were great. Why did I just crash on this bar?
Right.
And then the whirlwind starts, right?
Yeah.
Then they get
Yeah.
pulled out of the execution. They start getting sucked into the emotion, and then the whole thing gets started on the wrong foot.
How do you course
Yeah.
correct on something like that? Is it just so let's say, like, all right, here's a good one. What do you think your most difficult competition together has been? And
That's
how
a really good question.
Olympic finals 2021.
Correct. Correct.
Because I just couldn't, something just felt off. And during the warm-ups, my quad kept like grabbing, and I'd never had that before. Anytime I warmed up, things loosened up accordingly, and then it was fine. But I've learned that when I'm really stressed, especially in a situation like the Olympics, that's just a different type of stress, and it manifests itself into my body. And I think part of that is that it like gives me something else to focus on. And once that relaxes, it's like, oh, cool, I can jump. Like, we're good. And I think it's like a defense mechanism. I don't know. But something always seems to happen leading up to a championship, I feel
Yes.
like. And so that's happening during warm-ups. I'm not having a good warm-up. And I've had great meets all year. So this
what's
is just
not a good warm-up?
just bailing on a lot of jumps because I was thinking, is this gonna, like, it kept grabbing and cramping. And so I'd come down thinking about it, not thinking about hitting a takeoff. And so
Right.
then I would get off the ground, but I wouldn't actually like commit to the swing or the jump. And so by the end of warm-ups, I don't think I had a single good jump. And I'm going over to him and he's looking at me like, you're fine. You need to hit it. And I'm like, something just like this hurts. It feels wrong. And then my first attempt, I miss and I come down on it. And he's like, you're fine. You got to hit it. And I'm like, I'm like not even listening to him not because I don't trust what he's going to say, but it was one of those moments where I'm like, something just feels really off. And I just know what he's giving me is not fixing it. Like it was just a bad headspace to be in, a lot of stress. And so he's trying to coach me and nothing's coming in. And it was bad.
So how
Yeah.
do you course correct on something like that?
Well, so I agree with her. Like as I was thinking and she was saying that was definitely the case. And I know I did 2 Olympics, so I have my own freaking demons about success at Olympic Games. And, you know, the closest you can come, and it's not even close, but the closest you can come to getting some sort of redemption is being involved with somebody at the games, trying to help them do what you wanted to do and failed to do. So I have my own, my emotions are starting to run high, especially the warm-ups weren't great. And then, it comes down to a third attempt. And in my head, I'm like, please don't be the third no I did at Olympics sort of thing, right? But I mean, I'm not going to share that with her.
No.
But I realized, I think during warm-ups that I was, and this is not derogatory, like I was a cheerleader in the stands for Katie at the Olympics. Because when you're speaking to somebody, you know whether what you're saying goes into their brain, or you know if they're like glossed over, like this is bouncing off of their face and falling to the ground right below them. And what I was saying was not registering. And I knew through at least my own experience, like I know what it feels like to be pretty freaking nervous at an Olympic Games and not do what you want to do.
Right.
So I knew like I don't have influence here. I mean, I did, sure, right? But my hope was that I've prepared her for her to be able to make the right decisions. And I told her from the get-go, like, if you do like off-road rally car racing, there's like the guy driving and then there's the guy with the map. Like as a coach, I have the map and I'm sitting in the passenger seat. And I've never had any sort of thought that I'm somehow like the one driving when I'm coaching. I'm not driving.
It's a great analogy.
I've said this to people, like I can't make a Katie Moon. I can only help a Katie Moon. Like I can't take somebody who's not Katie and give them the success that Katie has because she's the driver. Right. So all I can do is like point in the right directions. And so fortunately, she was able to course correct because even what I was trying to say was bouncing off of her. And so that third attempt where she cleared the bar was like, that was Katie. Like, that wasn't me. I didn't do anything there.
You didn't make any changes. I just tried harder.
Yeah. But she knew
the thing you don't want to do.
Fortunately, she knew the cues of what trying harder meant. Trying harder doesn't mean like, Arr! It means like, okay, what are you going to do here? Are you going to move your hands? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? And I joked about this last night when we were chatting, but I also, fortunately, I felt really good leaving the competition because I did have some influence in the comp later on where she wanted to go up poles and I was like, that's not the right call. But also when an athlete tells me they want to go up poles, I'm usually like first person to give them thumbs up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, good, I did something today, but I have no, it's her show, it's her thing. I'm a supporting role. And so the course correction was her.
Right.
Like I didn't course correct anything, but she was prepared for the day, which was awesome, which I feel like I can, I had a role in, and that's all it needs to be.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's why I enjoy working with him because, you see coaches that just get so into their athletes' success and then take it as their own or just like insert and he has always been like, this is all you. Like, I want you to do well because I want you to reach your full potential and you're working hard and whatever. And he just wants to help athletes do well. But I've never felt like I was letting him down if I didn't have a good meet. And that kind of pressure I could not handle. So my frustration at the Olympics was more just frustrated because like I knew I was ready and just it felt so off. And to have that happen in the biggest meet of your life with all this pressure. And it was not even that I didn't want to listen to him. It was just a feeling of like, I know something's off here because he's telling me my step is fine. I'm feeling too far away. I'm sure it was, but I felt like I couldn't move through the space. And so I actually ended up making a change at 470 after I missed my first attempt again because I had missed 2, made it, missed again, which that really didn't happen. Once I was in, and I had cleared 50 by a lot.
That's
So
usually how you jump.
Once I'm in, I'm good until we get to those higher bars. And so I'm like, I just know that I feel far away, even if I'm not, and I am not moving through this space. So I just needed to run myself under to help kind of move the pole. But that was not something he was going to sign off on. So I just did it, cleared 70 by a lot, and told him after the fact. And he was just like, okay. But that was the thing. I just felt like I wasn't moving through the space, but I was cueing everything. I felt like I was cueing everything the way I normally did. And so that was why it was a little glassy eyed. Because I know it's in me right now. I'm doing something. There's no cue he can give me. I just have to figure out like how to like get through the space. And so it was just, it was funny in hindsight.
Sometimes as a coach, there's things you want to have happen with your athlete or that you're coaching them to do. And then sometimes you have to let that down and let the athlete do the things that they want to do.
Right.
So like if I want her step to be out, which I do, which everybody, generally wants it on takeoff, and Katie likes to take off a little bit close. I can't force something that she's not willing to accept, even if it may, from a physics standpoint, be the right thing.
Right.
It's not the right thing. And I do this on purpose where there are times where you can You know, there are times where you can stay on the pole and keep getting back, or you can go up one pole, bring the standards up 10 centimeters or even 15, and both of those equal a result. Like they both equal a successful result. And when that situation arises, I'll tell Katie, you have two options, and I will always make her pick. Not because I'm afraid of making the wrong one, but because her confidence to make the decision outweighs the equal, 1 equals 2.
Right.
But if her brain likes one better, then it's like now this one outweighs the other correct one.
How much? Oh, I'm sorry. You
Yeah, that was kind of the thing. So like there are times where I just think, again, the athlete's the one driving the ship.
Right.
And if they know that the answer this is what I need to do, even if it's the wrong thing from whatever model you want to be coming from, it may actually be the right thing.
Right.
If I force her to go up to a pole she's not comfortable with, it's going to be a bad jump. Even if it's the right decision and everybody else can see it, she'll somehow manage to make the other decision the correct one. I mean, not always, but you know what I'm saying? So there's weight to that. And so in the elite coaching world, maybe you don't give the high school athletes that choice as often, but in the elite coaching world, her mindset means something. It has to be a factor in the equation.
That was the question I was going to ask, is how much of this is a conversation as opposed to this is what you're doing, I don't care, like what you have to say about
I would
it.
say it's almost always a conversation. Now, I would say when I
Right.
first started working with him, I needed him to say, this is what we're doing, and this is why. Like, he would show me videos like, no, you have to go up a pole, because even if you're, like, afraid of it, like, because he'll show me the video, this is the blow through, and this is what makes sense. Like, sometimes he'll be like, okay, take another one on that one, hit the wall, but, like,
Right,
you know, but now at meets, it's very much a conversation, but I am always like, if he very confidently says, no, stay on that, no, go up, it's like done. He takes a lot of the decision making out of it, which is great. But if I'm telling him this is what I'm feeling, then he'll listen and we'll make decisions together. But we've gotten to a point in the relationship where I feel like there's an equal trust. He knows how I'll respond by certain decisions he makes, and I know if he tells me to do this, it's for very good reason, and I'll commit to it with adrenaline usually.
Right.
So now it's definitely, I would say, 50-50 in just making decisions mid-meet.
Yeah, as you teach somebody the methodology or philosophy or whatever, and they learn it, then you're now on the same page. So like that there's a different answer year 1 versus year 7. Mm-hmm. And Katie's input now is much more refined. So by year 7, I can take her insight with a lot more weight.
Yeah.
Because she understands the process and she understands the coaching philosophy. So now there's way more weight. But in like year 1, it was like, I want to go ahead and take that decision from you because you don't quite get it yet, but you're getting there. And then, throughout the whole course of those years, yeah, she's 100% right. I mean, she understands it. So, I mean, you saw us working together today.
Yeah.
I don't have to say that much because I've said it over years. Right?
If you have to say a lot at this point.
Yeah, then what?
I need to retire.
Yeah. Well, and again, if you really believe that it's about simplifying equation, words can just overcomplicate it and then it turns into a mess. And so she knows what I'm after. I know what she's attempting to do. I can give her a little bit of feedback, and that's all it requires. And also one thing that's been awesome with Katie as she's been keeping her like health hygiene up to standards, meaning chiropractic care, acupuncture when she needs it in her Achilles, getting adjusted, getting massage. We've never had like long breaks where she has to relearn stuff. So now it's like we had this conversation before where her first meet's going to be Doha. I don't know if I'm allowed to share.
That's fine.
But
I'm opening in Doha.
her first meet's Doha. But we get to have that conversation as I'm doing her training going, how much full approach jumping do you need? And really, I know that if she gets off the ground one time from full approach, she's ready to compete in Doha, and she's going to do a lot more than that.
Yeah, I don't need a lot.
But also, because there's so many repetitions without any long pauses, because she's been awesome at keeping her therapy up and not overtraining and doing the workouts and pushing herself and doing all the things that we've been working on for such a long period of time, it just requires less inputs. Like
and
the ball's
you
in
understanding how much she can handle too, like as far as like volume and stuff like that. Like that probably is really nice too, because you at this point, like we were talking last night about how how much like you probably understand about how your body works at this point in your career is probably insane.
Yeah.
You know, and then he probably understands a lot about how your body responds to particular things.
For sure. I feel like he has come to like understand how my body works better than I do, like with certain training blocks. And, you know, he's going back to 2021 and like taking things from that and putting it into this year's training plan. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've had little things like last year, the Achilles thing, we'd get a jump session and then I couldn't do anything for a week, but I haven't had to get like a major surgery or like anything that has really taken me out for months at a time. And
how do you deal with
awesome.
that week, like the example that you're talking about, like where it's like your Achilles is bothering you. And I remember just being like, I can't take time off. Like, how do you deal with that, like mentally?
Thankfully, because I am later in my career and I've had success off of not great seasons, it was easier for me to keep my calm. It was not great because it's an Olympic year.
Right.
But just focusing on what I could do versus what I could not do. So like if I had a bike workout, I was giving that my all. Like if I had to modify some of the lifting, I was still giving that everything I had. And so then I was still showing up fit when my body cooperated, and so that I could still get on the runway fully capable of doing what I had done in the past. I think that's what 2022 showed me, is just having a full year of just being depressed basically and not wanting to vault and crying every jump session and then doing what I did at Worlds. That really instilled confidence to where then in 2024, okay, I'm going through it, but you have gone through it before and been able to show up at a championship. And so just stay calm.
Right.
And I mean, I also fully trust Brad is very good at modifying things too. It's not just, okay, it's not that he's good at writing a plan. It's that if I'm feeling something, I'm very communicative, probably too much of just like what I'm feeling. And if I'm feeling little things, and sometimes he's like, you're fine, you're just sore, run through it. And other times like he'll change things as needed. And I think the combination of me being a little too cautious and him being less cautious has worked as like a
really
perfect
good.
So yeah, just trust in him and trust in myself that when on the day, if it can feel good, I'll be fine and just get it healthy. So
I think it's a skill too, like being able to be confident through modifications. Like that's one thing that I think people struggle with is, here's the plan. And then if you have to modify the plan, like in their head, they think like, well, why are we modifying the plan?
Yeah.
Like that's the plan.
That's a
and so
failure.
now am I failing now? Like,
Yeah.
and so what's going on? And then they just spiral. And like being able to maintain your confidence when you modify the plan, like there'd be times all the time where it would be like, all right, Luke's Achilles is bothering him, or, my back hurts or whatever. And it's like, oh, just don't do the rest of the reps. And 3 years prior to that, it would have been either he's going to push through all the reps and risk getting hurt, or he's going to be like, oh, well, now everything's going to fall apart because I wasn't able to finish that one workout,
Yep.
That's a really hard skill.
Yeah.
It's definitely one that comes with age, being able to modify and maintain your confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've kind of learned that as long as I can show up on the day and still have some level of fitness in me, the vaulting's still there. It's still in me. So with adrenaline, with meet pressure, like it's more often going to be okay. And sometimes it's good to just throw yourself in and swim. Like, you might not feel ready, but just go in there and put yourself in it. If you know height, but at least you're there and you're getting feedback.
Yeah, you got to get in there.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you. It's kind of on topic. You were talking about 2022, very kind of depressed year.
Yeah.
Came out on top, but what was your first world medal, like world or Olympic?
The Olympics in 2021.
Exactly. That was the point I wanted to make, is your first world medal was an Olympic gold medal. That sets you up to be very joyous, but I also can see how that can be like, I'm an Olympic gold medalist, and then oh shoot,
I have to
I'm
back
an
this
Olympic
up.
gold
Yeah.
medalist. Like
Yeah.
from your perspective and your perspective, I kind of want to know how you, first of all, like how crazy that is. Like that's insane. But also how you approached like that next year. I don't know, Brad, if you approached it differently and then also follow up how that related to how you guys are approaching this year after coming off of the Olympics.
Do you want to go first?
No, you go first.
Okay. No, the Olympics is the dream. There's always a bigger competition until the Olympics. Like that's it. And to win that was very surreal. It didn't feel real in the moment. It didn't feel real for a while. It was actually like watching my family and friends watch me win the Olympics, that's when it really like sinks in. And when people ask you about it come up, that's so awesome. And part of it I think was COVID. There was no one in the stands. So having now been to Paris, that was a huge part of it. But everything I had ever done and all of my stress and anxiety, it was just, I want to make the Olympics and I want to win Olympic gold. Mm-hmm. Now what? That was it. That was all I think maybe you had asked. I feel like often we get asked, would you rather break the world record or win the Olympics? I did not know how to answer that until I won the Olympics, and it was win the Olympics. Like that was what I wanted. And don't get me wrong, I still want to go break the world record.
Yeah. Right.
But that was it. And so to come off of that, and I just crashed. My nervous system, like everything just hit rock bottom, and I just didn't care, but I wanted to care. It was a very strange feeling of I would show up to practice and I had always had a very base level of how I felt coming into a jump session. There was a certain level of adrenaline. Even if I was exhausted and flat and tired, there was still the sense of urgency. I have to get off the ground. I have to do it. I didn't have that. And I didn't know how to jump without it. And I think I just didn't take any breaks after the Olympics. I took 6 weeks off, but did so many activities and things around it, talking about it.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It was amazing. I don't regret any of it.
Cool,
I wouldn't trade any of it. But then I started jumping right away and never really got a break emotionally from it. And so, and then I just had to keep going because Worlds was in the US. So that's, kind of the dream. Other than the Olympics is getting to compete at a major championship in your home country. And I knew I would never forgive myself if I didn't make that team, but with how I was feeling all year, it was just so hard. I ended most days crying. I could barely get off the ground from even 4 lefts, not barely from 5. And
wow, I didn't hear about a lot of this. That's crazy.
I didn't win any. I think the only meet I won that year was Reno from 5 lefts at the very beginning of the year, and then I lost every meet. Yeah. No height at a Diamond League.
It was like it wasn't like a big drama thing, but it was like amongst everybody. Everybody kind of knew. You were open about it too, and you had just kind of been honest about, hey, I'm going through a hard time, and amidst all of that, you have new training groups coming in, and then you have a world championship in the U.S. this next year. That's this is the first one ever, or the first one in a really long time. I think it might have been the first one ever.
Yeah.
And it's just like very interesting to see how you go from that low. Like, was there a trajectory that started to come up, or was it because I know even U.S. championships was a struggle, kind of?
Yes. I remember being down to a 3rd attempt, and I kind of said to myself, maybe this is how I know I'm done. Maybe this is it. I'm 31.
So that I was wondering that too.
Like maybe this is my sign that I did what I wanted to do, and as much as I would have loved to break a world record, like maybe this is it. And I was down to a 3rd attempt at a bar that if I had missed, I was not on the team. And I was like, okay, I'm going to find out right now how bad I want this. And I remember picking up my pole going, you're not done yet. And I made it. And then I made the team. And I think once the stress of being on that team was gone, then I was able to relax a little bit. We were still coming from short approach, but I started to get some pain in my posterior tib. That's when that started. And I think on every level I knew, like, my body is telling me I need a break, mentally, physically. And so I knew that Worlds was going to be my last meet of the year, even though there were several Diamond Leagues after. So we went into that, like, and I was like, last one, best one. Let's just go jump for jump. And we came in wanting, I wasn't sure if I was going to jump from full approach or short approach. And we jumped from 6 lefts in the prelim. And the night before, we kind of looked at each other and I said 6 lefts. And he's like, yep. And for the final, and that's what we did.
She brought poles for full approach, and our plan was to get through we know she could get through prelim from short. And let's make that decision if we can get you back to full approach to really go after this thing.
Right.
And then when I saw, I think it was the night of prelim, but at dinner, or was it the next day?
Yeah, I think it was the night of.
It was that night, and I looked at her, and I kind of knew she was going to be, like, in my heart, I was like, she's going from 6. And I was like, what are we doing at the final? She was like, 6. I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
I was like, she wasn't going to be capable to execute.
Better
full
roll
approach.
with what's confident, like in that moment. you know?
Exactly. And she freaking
Wow.
rocked it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So then, like, from that, so it is pretty crazy though. Like, so you went from, you had made you had made a couple world championships prior to the Olympics, I'm saying?
Yes, I made an indoor and an outdoor world champs. Yes.
And then went Olympic gold, and then golds, and made Olympic team, Olympic silver. Like, it's insane. But then 2024, so like leading in to that Olympic Games, did you attack it differently than you did the previous Olympic Games? And then going to 2025,
Yeah.
like, how is it different to try to avoid what happened in 21 or 22?
Well, to be fair, I don't know if you want to give your 2 cents on how it was from your perspective in 2022, and then like go into
Sure.
how 2024.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, obviously, my Olympic experiences were very, very different, and I personally always had the world record as my number one goal.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
And I thought the way that the way that I had kind of like rationalized it in my head was, if I'm getting closer and closer to achieving my goal, every championship falls nicely in the mix, right? If I'm getting closer to the world record, that means I'm getting closer to a gold medal in anything.
Yeah.
So I would have, I didn't have the Olympic post depression because both of my Olympics ended poorly. And so then I just was either filled with anger or frustration, or like, let's get back at it. I have a lot of work to do, and want to make up for all that kind of stuff. So I don't understand the post-Olympic blues, because I just didn't experience it, because I didn't have what I wanted to, and I didn't have a letdown. I had a huge letdown, but it was
A lot of fire.
Yeah, and it wasn't a healthy fire. It was like a nitrous, you hit this too many times, things are going to burn out fire. So I was super frustrated because, one, I couldn't understand where she was coming from. Number 2, I had seen this is post. If you look at something like Mondo, is jumping the world records, gets his gold, keeps jumping world records. It's like there's no drop off, there's no anything. He's just collecting things along the way. Right. Like, I feel like maybe how my brain would have perceived it. I have no idea, because I didn't get to experience it, but I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And also there was tons of tears, and it was hard. I mean, it was just, we had talks of like, you don't know if she's going to be able to bounce back from it, because the ultimate goal has now been accomplished. And we realized we would have those conversations. She realized that the world record would be neat, but it wasn't the thing. And the Olympic gold was the thing. So now the pinnacle thing is to be achieved. Does she have the motivation to come back from something like that? So it was a tough year, but she walked her way back. She got the, world champ gold. And I think that was super important. I mean, everybody would understand that if you beat everybody in the world from short approach, it's going to be a big confidence boost.
Oh, yeah.
And, I don't think she ever felt, I don't know, I've never really, asked her. I don't think she ever felt like there was an imposter syndrome when she won Olympic gold, but certainly when you win a world championship gold from short approach, if you somehow didn't allow that Olympic gold to sink in that you're good, you now realize after that world champs, like, I'm pretty good at this, because I handicapped myself. Not by choice, right? It was just the how it was going to all unfold. But now it's like, I think that really helped her understand for like 23 and 24, like, I'm pretty darn good. I can do this. And then there was no issues in 23,
No,
really.
I
She was
mean,
back.
I got one PRP injection in my
I mean, more like
posterior tib, not
motivation
mental.
issues.
No,
yeah.
no.
She was back after
It was
she
more
won that
physical.
one. Yeah.
Because I then took 6 weeks off, like, and finally got the full rest.
Got
and
your break, yeah.
To his credit, he handled it very well. I can't imagine how frustrating it was, like, because it didn't make sense logically. Nothing about it made sense. But he allowed me to, like, just be kind of sad for a while and just be sad about pole vault. And then after, I remember we were on the phone. I was in Florida with my family on vacation, and he's like, next year's going to look a little different. I'm going to push you a little differently next year, just so you're aware. Like, what you did last year, we're not doing that this year.
Yeah, you know what was interesting about it was up to that point, you know, we had all the stories. I covered the pit, and, you know, she's breaking down crying, and I've got to push her, and I've got to teach her things, that it's not okay to do this. And I was able to see that couldn't be done in 2022.
Yeah.
So in 2022, she actually gained a lot of control, similar to probably what she had in previous years with old coaches.
Okay.
But I understood that I could break her if I don't allow her to do that. Like, there was just something in me that was like, she has to do these things, and I can't be hard on her because that would, like, she could break.
Yeah.
You know, just
That's true.
and
You
you
just
know.
feel the line that you didn't want to cross.
Yeah.
So so it was tough because, you know, when you know how talented somebody is and then you watch that talent not being fulfilled as a coach, it's super frustrating. But also when the outcome was positive and then she was back in 2023, we just kind of picked up where we needed to.
Yeah.
You know, and
Pretty smooth
Yeah.
Right.
sailing
Yeah.
at that point.
and then going into 24, like, good job, Nina. You won. It's awesome.
yeah.
And she
She
had
jumped great.
she had the fire that is required to win an Olympic gold.
Yep.
And Katie, like, I know Katie could own that gold as well, but Katie was, like, very excited to have another medal, and it was secure, and it was this, and I was like,
Once the standard broke and I had my medal, I'm like,
she's taking pictures with her family, and I'm like, there's more. And I kind of like, I was just like, you know, and that was me. That was me internalizing, like, wanting that Olympic gold or knowing there's something more or whatever.
Right.
And she was okay with that, and I was like, yeah, she could have jumped. She could have jumped the next bar too. But then after 2024, going into this year, there's been a little bit of a reignited fire under her belt where she's
That's
like,
awesome.
hey, I'm gonna go ahead and get this one, sort of thing.
Yeah, so like what training, because a lot of stuff has changed. People don't know, like, usually the U.S. Outdoor Championships are in June. They're in August. That's like a whole 2 extra months. World Championships are in September, even a month later than the Olympics, and the Olympics are late. So, like, how do you approach this year now? You're saying that you're doing a restart. Like, you were just jumping from 4 lefts today. Today was day 1, apparently.
from Korea.
For leading into the outdoor season. How did the indoor season look? And then going into outdoors, is the plan to start later, to go longer into September through all of the stuff?
You'll have to ask him. He does all of
Brad,
my
what are we doing?
training and planning and
yeah. So
When is Doha? Because you said
That's May.
middle of May. So
Okay,
usually
alright,
it's
gotcha.
like very beginning of May. So even that's like bumped
Okay.
down a couple weeks.
Yeah, so, well, and also in this whole process, she's now moved to Tulsa, and I'm still in Atlanta, so now there's a little bit more remote coaching, so I'm not there on a daily basis, and so there's lots of changes. However, the way that it looks now, getting through the indoor season, the only goal that Katie doesn't necessarily have is that world indoor gold, and so I wanted to. When we knew that the world indoors was going to be in China, not only was it in China, but it was a month after nationals, the world indoor gold was not something that necessarily had to be on my radar.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is your call. I'm not going to push you one way or the other. Do you want to go to China? Do you want? She was like, no, I don't need to go.
Yeah.
And I get it. You don't need that one. She's got all the other ones.
right.
So then we started the rest early, so we wouldn't postpone a full another month or whatever of training and a big travel and potentially getting sick in China or whatever's going to happen. And then knowing that she feels confident with very little time off the ground from 8 lefts and doesn't need a ton of vaulting before Doha, we put in a pretty good speed block. She was doing much more longer runs and working on speed a little bit more than she has. She's obviously fast, but if we can massage those numbers up a little bit higher, and we have the time to do it since Worlds is so late. So that's why today is like day 1 from 4 lefts. Like the
Right.
majority of elite athletes are probably, for a lot further along. She doesn't need many reps from full approach, and so we were able to put in a little bit more of a speed block, and then we're going to stay on the gas a little bit more than we would so long as Achilles isn't acting up, and really try to approach this as like, let's get as close to 9 meters a second down the runway as we can, and start refining, the technique once we get there. But it's trying to figure out where she's at, what her body can handle, and what her we just don't feel like we have to be taking, tons of jumps. Like she's got it. She knows how to jump. So
if you were to get like 2 exercises that she responds to well, actually, this will be interesting.
If only I say the same thing.
I'll get both of them. Yeah. Who wants to go first?
3, 2, 1.
I feel like if I go first, then he will still give his honest answer. If he goes first, then that might sway me into saying the same thing.
We gotta do yours.
Okay,
so what does your, like, if you were to pick 2 exercises, like, that you respond really well to, like physically respond well to, but also like make you confident?
As far as drills or weight room or both, like anything.
Kind of like strength and speed.
Yeah, let's
type
do
stuff.
strength and speed.
I would say I really like power cleans.
Okay.
I think the impulse of getting it up is very similar to the impulse at hitting a takeoff. Once I started incorporating those, which that was, going back to before Brad, we weren't really doing Olympic lifting. And so I do think incorporating that from a physical but mental standpoint has helped a lot.
From the floor?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we do hang cleans as well,
Yeah.
but I think from the floor, I like it better, power cleans. And then I think, honestly, well, if we're talking like drills that will help me get confident on the runway, it's just pole runs. If I feel like my run is really dialed in, I'll take it, and I will want to put my hands up every time. But as far as like training,
90 second
sprints.
run.
Stop it right now. Stop it. No.
What is a 90-second run?
Oh, the most
fall stuff,
horrible,
probably. Early fall
torturous
stuff, yeah.
workout you could ever imagine.
Is that where you try to see how far you can go in 90 seconds?
5 times in a row, and your rest is sit-ups and push-ups, and you're back on the line. It's like
Holy.
the worst 12 minutes of my life.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. Yeah, it's rough.
I think I've peed
90
myself
seconds
in the
is a long
past because I'm so numb from like the waist down. Like,
She
but
doesn't
I
like
did
that
it.
one.
I did
She
it. I
doesn't
got
like
all
that one.
all 5 to 400.
Whoa.
But there is, I'm going to regret this, but there is something to those early season workouts that like I never thought I could accomplish that. And then you do it and you're like, I'm awesome. I am
Just
so
makes you
strong.
feel like a badass.
It's
like
a-
you just
I
trained
can-
really
It's a gut check.
hard.
I
and-
can do
yeah.
It's a gut check, for
anything. And so as much as I hate them, there's absolute, like I feel so good after I complete one an hour later.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I would say cleans and just sprinting, just really good sprinting workouts, like short sprints, because I don't like long sprints. But
You had mentioned your pole runs, and just really quick, do you guys like, are those measured out, or is that just you feeling the run? And
Feeling the run.
Feeling it.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So, yes, it's the same answer.
Sweet.
The only thing, so I was actually going to say
Nice.
hang cleans because, but I realized that we had this conversation earlier this year. She prefers from the floor, mostly because if she liked hang cleans, but when she would drop them, she would be a little bit too relaxed in her shoulders.
My
and
rib
then
liked to go.
her first rib would want to kind of sublux a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
So she would always like, hey, I'm doing hang cleans, but when the weight goes up and I drop it on my knees, like my neck hurts. And so we swapped it to full cleans, and then she just drops it, never like holds onto it and just drops it to the floor. So it turned into that. So anyway, I was gonna say cleans, and then in my head I go, well, I know she needs to do full approach pole runs, but then we need the speed work. So it was pretty much like identical. It was like
Right.
cleans, and then she needs pole runs, but it has to be some sprinting.
Yeah.
Because her pole runs are usually more rhythmic in nature, and she's feeling rhythm, so we're not pushing speed or speed development at all. But yeah, she needs strong acceleration work to just make sure that her engine's firing and she's getting to top speed.
But the
Gotcha.
90-second runs are your favorite to watch.
Yeah, well, Yes
I
and
take a
no.
long time in between each burpee.
Sometimes it
let
gets
me
really.
tell you.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, when you're
Like,
watching.
the jumping jacks get a little like
Little
pathetic.
slow, a little sloppy, and then she starts like wheezing really bad, or it's like,
Louder.
I'm like, come on.
I am a loud breather, and you missed it this year. Hugo likes, my husband likes to distance run, and he is pretty good at pacing. So he actually paced me through the 90-second runs this year. And when I got to 4, coming up the backstretch, it was
Oh, that's so relatable. The noise where it starts to become a wheeze
Yes.
on like the end
Yeah.
of a
'cause you
300
can't
or a
even like
400.
control
Oh.
your diaphragm.
Yeah.
And so he's like laughing in front of me because this is easy for him, and I'm
Right.
just dying in the
That's
back.
hilarious.
How many
yeah.
days recovery do you have off after something like that?
I mean, in the preseason,
It'd be
it's
like
like,
on a Wednesday.
Monday's harder, Tuesday active recovery, Wednesday harder, Thursday off, Friday harder. So
Okay.
you'd get like a full day off after that.
Gotcha.
typically.
Gotcha.
But I will say this year I feel like I wasn't lifting the same days I was doing that.
Yeah. I mean,
so it just kind of depends.
Yeah.
Right,
It
right.
depends on the year and where she's at and all that. But I learned lots of super valuable information working with Dan Paff and understanding physiology and stuff like that. And a lot of my training is based off stuff that worked under his programming, switching days around, understanding parasympathetic versus sympathetic, and making sure that we have enough time to recover from a strenuous training session and everything. But I also realized with like Dan's programming, there was a few things that I wanted to put back in that I thought were valuable in college that got removed in kind of the pro stuff. And some of these early workouts are that. And so I've always thought like I want, most of the time, because we're so anaerobic in nature, we're not getting like a lot of lung expansion, a lot of heavy breathing, the diaphragm's not moving. I think we talked about some of this stuff in maybe one of the podcasts.
Yeah.
And I always just thought it was like an oil change. So it's like we have all sorts of good blood flow and breathing, diaphragmatic, opening and closing, rib cage opening and closing. But then also, probably more importantly, it's like that gut check. It's like, hey, this is a real season. This is a real thing that you're caring about. Like, go do the hard work that other people probably couldn't hang with you.
Right.
And make sure that you realize like you're still tough and you can do hard things.
Right.
So lots of good reasons for it. But yeah, I thought that when I was doing post-collegiate training, we pulled out some of that stuff, and I was like, I don't know if there's something to it. You know what I'm saying?
I always go back and forth, and we'll probably end up wrapping up here not too long, because we've been talking pole vaulting for like two days straight. But I've always went back and forth with it. Like, obviously, I see the value in like really hard work. I mean, I've done multiple ultra marathons. Like, I enjoy crushing myself. Like, that's like I enjoy that. I love it. And I always struggled with, like, when I was writing his training, like how to balance that, because I see a lot of value in like just mentally just being like you're a mental kind of savage, but then just balancing, like, well, I guess if you're doing it in the fall, it's not
And
that.
I was going to say, like, how many of those? Is it 3 months
2.
worth?
No.
You know what I'm saying?
2
Yeah,
weeks.
like
You get 2 chances you get one to shock your system, and
That's
then
what
you
I
get the
kinda
second
thought.
one to
Yeah.
get better.
The workout itself lasts like 20 minutes.
It's
just
so
it's
short.
just
It's
a
just
reintroduction.
Yeah,
it's just
it's
a reintroduction to, hey, like in 2022, that tough year. Did you do those?
Yeah.
And did they feel a lot slower?
No, actually, they felt okay. It was just when I got to the pole vault runway.
Yeah.
Because it required a different like urgency of, I have to show up. I have to feel a type of way if I'm getting off the ground. And I didn't have to do that for 90-second runs. I just show up to the track, complain, get on the line, and go. And I had Sandy there.
Yeah.
She's a machine when it comes to those endurance type workouts. And
Yeah.
like, I'd be laying there for 20 minutes and she'd pop up immediately. I'm like, did you even try? Like, what? She's so good at those strength endurance workouts and
Right.
with speed as well. And so it was good because it did push me. I mean, that was the year that I made it for the first time, I think.
2022.
I think, but I did it alone on the second one. So
Because you
that,
started later than everybody.
yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
she was on a different cycle.
Yeah.
But
So
one thing that I think, going back to that 2022 year that I forgot to mention, and you could correct me if I'm taking this the wrong way, but I I always knew that Katie's drive to succeed was probably somewhere of a drive to succeed and somewhere of a fear of failure. Like the motivation to get off the ground was stronger. It was more important for her to get off the ground because she was so afraid to fail. And I'm not trying to put in words in her mouth.
Yeah.
No, that's correct.
That when she had the ultimate success, she has now overcome that fear of failure. So the motivation to force her off the ground didn't come into play like it had in the past. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah.
You need to be a therapist. I have
I
never
know,
thought
I
about it
know.
like that, but that is exactly what I have tried to articulate.
Nailed it.
It's taken
Yeah.
her 4 years
Clip
to
it.
articulate what you just did in 5 seconds.
Gosh,
And-
dang it.
And he says it so confidently.
So
it's just like,
Yeah.
perfectly.
that's what it is.
Yeah, and he's right.
So that was also why I knew that I couldn't push her, because the things that kept her leaving the ground were now like removed, but I couldn't just like instill that by like being aggressive towards her.
right.
And then there was this process of her own successes then overtaking the fear, because the fear is now removed. So now almost in a really positive way, the motivation became positive, whereas the fuel to go get the Olympic gold was almost bordering negative
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
So in a really cool, like overall personal development, her success now is positively driven, and it's no matter what, moving forward, everything's okay.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
all going to work now.
And to your earlier question about how I didn't experience that this year because it wasn't negative going into 2024, I didn't feel that same like have to do this urgency. Of course, I
Yeah.
wanted to do well, don't get me wrong, but it was so much more positive all around. And it was, you know, how good can I be? Like everything at this point is a cherry on top in my career. And again, I think not winning and not having the flood of, you know, media and, you know, all of the experiences. People are excited for you, but
Yeah.
they don't tend to care as much when you come home with the silver than when you do with the gold. And thankfully, I was a little nervous people were going to be hard on me for not winning. And thankfully, I did not get any of that. Everyone was so like,
Or you get the classic,
congratulatory.
like, hey, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry
right.
to go well this time.
Yeah.
You're like,
Meanwhile, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, then coming into this year, I think I was just so excited to move to Tulsa to go be with my husband full time and get to do this kind of on my own. I had a new excitement about it, and just to see, can I do this on my own again? But I think everything he instilled with that internal motivation and what he expected at training just became habit. And yeah, so I haven't felt any of that. If anything, I took my necessary time off. I would, you know, if someone reached out for an interview, sometimes I just said, hey, I just need a few weeks. Please reach back out in a few weeks. And I would end up doing the interview, and that was fine.
Right.
But I really got the time off and then was able to come back excited. And like he said, there's this new fire. I think now it's become, I really want to jump the world record because I know I'm on borrowed time just with my age and some of the injuries I've had. Like I'm in my last couple years of like good prime jumping, and I want to just get everything out of that I can, as you know, God willing. So I want to take advantage of that as best I can. So it's been fun, and I don't know that it's ever been fun like this. So
That is a good closer right there.
absolutely.
And this is the One More Jump podcast. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah.
This is the One More
Absolutely.
Jump podcast. Appreciate it.
That was great.